Hello, and welcome to this episode of my fan specialization series. In this video, I will be going over a light armor elite specialization I've made. The subjects I will be covering include weapon type and skills, utility skills, profession mechanics or changes, while finally ending on minor traits and a sampling of some major trait ideas. Be sure to check out my other elite specialization ideas in the playlists and be on the lookout for more of these videos in the series. Today we're going to begin with the elementalist profession and the elite specialization that I have branded as the Mystic. The Mystic is a ranged DPS focused on poking enemies from afar while still managing to be a little bit flighty in their movement capabilities. Let us start with the new weapon that I have given the Elementalist, which I will now be referring to as the Mystic. That is the longbow weapon. The new weapon the Mystic gets is the longbow, and additionally the longbow and, of course, the Mystic plays into the new profession mechanic, which is a new attunement. For the sake of lack of creativity, but also sparing some time, I've just named this Arcane Attunement. Of course, this could also be something completely different: light attunement, dark attunement, chaos attunement, any type of magic. However, I feel like it's more in line with the Elementalist to have arcane skills, so I just went with the Arcane Attunement for their F5. In this video, I'm going to be specifically focusing in on the longbow F5 arcane skills rather than fleshing out every single weapon type with the F5. I think in the scope of my series, it's not necessarily needed. This is more of just a sampler and some ideas. So first off, let's start with the auto attack for the Mystic's longbow. This skill is Arcane Arrow. Fire an arrow of arcane energy. Arrows fired at an increased range have a slightly greater chance of critically striking. This just sets up the ranged idea, and the increased critical strike I did not actually put on, but I would have that to be somewhere around 15 to 20% of an increased chance when you are, say, above 900 units. For the second skill, I have channeled Arcana. Draw your bow, preparing an arrow of heavy damage. The longer this ability is channeled, the more damage the arrow will do. Fully charging the arrow guarantees a critical strike. I remember back in the day they used to have channeled abilities where you would have to hold it down to have a greater effect. One skill that comes to mind is the alpha version of Water Staff Elementalist, where they had ice shards, but then they moved to Disruptor. So I wanted to bring back this playstyle of being planted and having control of how long you want to charge it, and of course gaining more benefits if you fully charge this skill. The third skill that I have is Mystical Evasion. Quickly shoot an arrow and teleport backwards, gaining distance between foes. Successfully evading an attack grants Fury for 3 seconds. This is a little bit of poke damage while maintaining your ranged. If, per se, there is a melee combatant that comes up too close and gets a little too comfortable, this will allow you to back away 600 units. The fourth skill is Cosmic Binding. Fire an arrow skywards, catching cosmic energy to strike a foe. Successfully impacting a foe deals damage and immobilizes the target. The damage is moderate, but this skill is mostly for its immobilization effect, making sure that an enemy is locked down while you can deal some damage from afar. Once again, this could deter melee combatants, of course, unless they, clear the immobilization. And for the fifth skill, we have Arcana Unleashed. Perch in the air and conjure a stream of magical energy through your bow. Channel the energy while fixed in the air, bombarding enemies below with immense damage. Successfully completing the channel grants might and protection. I imagine the skill to be a very much lengthier cast time, maybe 3.5 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, where you just do a lot of damage, where you are shooting constant arcane missiles down at a targeted location. And I wanted to have this reward, but also this risk factor of being pretty vulnerable while you're using the skill. But if you complete the channel, you gain some additional might, which will increase your damage, and some protection, just to make sure that, you know, you were there for a while, no one interrupted you, and you weren't killed. So you should, you know, of course, get a little bit of protection from that. So these were the abilities that I have created for the F5, the Arcane Attunement of the Mystic, and of course the Longbow. One would, of course, have to make skills for Staff, Scepter, and Dagger for F5, and of course have the Fire, Water, Air, and Earth attunements be fully fleshed out with Longbow skills. However, with the amount of time that I've given myself, once again, just focused more on the Arcane Attunement. Now let's talk about the utility skills I've given the Mystic. I decided to go with Consecrations, as I feel like Guardians have kind of held on to Consecrations long enough. And for the use of ranged, I felt Consecration also was a nice utility skill, as also it applies benefits to allies at range while they're in the skill effects. So let us begin with the healing, move on to the normal utilities, and then finally the elite. So with the healing skill, I've named Universal Gift. Conjure an area of regenerative magic. The initial casts heals you. So it's an initial heal while sending out and summoning a circle of healing that does moderate healing over time. It's not supposed to really take the place of a Tempest per se, with immense support to allies around you, and support meaning healing. So this is more of just an added help, an added assistance. And it also could just be used pretty selfishly if you want to create an area around you while you fire from afar. That was my healing skill. Let's start with the normal utilities, with the consecrations. So this is Astral Pyramid. Conjure a pyramid of entombing magic, preventing any enemy from entering or leaving. While in this area, allies are granted boons. This is a triangular area of effect. You know, we have circles, we have roads, we have multiple missile AoEs within one larger circle, we have tethers. This is basically a pyramid. This will prevent enemies from crossing in or out, so it's similar to a ward. This also has an ethereal field, while granting allies inside resistance and retaliation for 1 second, and has a duration of 5 seconds. So in total, the longer you stay in, the more boons you'll be getting pulsed on you. If you leave early, they'll drop off after a second or so. The next utility I have is Enhancing Wall. Conjure a wall of potent magic, empowering all projectiles to deal more damage or healing, depending on what their function is. So this will empower damaging projectiles by 15%, while empowering healing projectiles by 20%. This is similar to like a line, not a line, but a wall of reflection. So you'll place it down, and any projectile shot through will, you know, do their effect. This is also an ethereal field, so it has the possibility of causing confusion. Once again, there are quite a few ethereal fields on these consecrations, and it is a 5-second duration. The next consecration is Frigid Air. Conjure a ring of intense cold air, slowing enemies and damaging foes. They're basically doing the same thing. Slowing and damaging foes. So does some damage over a duration, not a lot of damage. This is mostly for the slow. It'll affect 5 targets in a ring, and it's an ice field instead of an ethereal field. You know, pretty pretty categorical for any ice and water abilities. And the final utility skill is Latent Energy Bomb. I had a lot of fun coming up with this skill. Like sometimes you just have those moments where you're like, oh yes, this could be cool. So it's a consecration. You conjure an orb at a location. Allies and enemies can damage the orb, which empowers it. And after a duration, it explodes while leaving a small damaging field. So the initial damage is a bit heavier hitting, but 40% of the damage which it receives during its lifespan will be added to the initial impact. So the more you damage this orb, the more damage it will do on its initial blast. So if you want to kind of switch targets and do more area of effect damage with this skill, you can. Of course, once it explodes, it will leave a smaller area of damaging. Not such intense damage, but still, I needed that consecration category. So once again, this is an ethereal field, and the orb will last 8 seconds. So after 8 seconds, it will detonate. I also don't want ArenaNet to be scared of having longer lasting effects, which aren't necessarily damage, but more so interact with the skill in some way. And then finally, for the elite, I have Solar Summoning. I think the cooldown that I have here of 75 seconds might actually need to be increased, because I think this is kind of powerful. So the elite, Solar Summoning. It's a consecration, once again. Call down the sun Deuteria, devastating its surroundings. The sun applies heavy damage, burning, and will apply the exhaustion effect on enemies. Of course, in an expansion, exhaustion, I can't speak, could be a condition, but for the sake of this is just the effect. So a lot of damage over 5 ticks, which is its duration. And it'll apply 1 burning with every tick, which lasts for 2 seconds. And of course, when you're inside this ring, you will have the exhaustion effect applied to you. This is a much larger radius of 360, which could be lowered upon retrospect, or you could just increase this cooldown to say like 120 seconds, 130 seconds, something much more appropriate for such an elite skill, while also this is a fire field, so if you blast in it, you'll gain more might. Those are my consecrations. Yay! Time to share my trait ideas for the Mystic. I'll be sharing 1 minor trait, 1 adept, 1 master, and 1 grandmaster. So for the minor trait, I have Mage Mentality. Damage is increased at longer ranges. The damage increases of 10% when you are beyond 900 units. This is similar to other traits that are already in the game, but I wanted to reward any Mystic player who plays at range, either with a staff or with a longbow. So yes. Moving on to the adept trait, I have Elemental Knowledge. This might seem like a lot, however, I think it is pretty befitting of a adept one, considering it's only affecting a few conditions and boons. So, through the years of practicing the fundamentals of elemental magic, burning, vulnerability, weakness, and bleeding all have reduced durations on you. In the event any of these conditions are cleansed from you, they will instead turn into a boon. So this is burning, vulnerability, weakness, and bleeding. Their durations are reduced by 15%. Now this instance of it becoming a boon is not if a skill already will flip a condition into a boon. This is just for some supportive skills that cleanse conditions. So it only affects 4 conditions. If you happen to have burning, vulnerability, weakness, and bleeding ripped off of you or cleansed off of you, this will be turned into might for fire, regeneration for water, vigor for air, and protection for earth. Moving on to the master trait, I have the Mystic's Quiver, successfully channeling Arcane Unleashed, or Arcana Unleashed. This is the longbow 5th skill. Summons a small arcane wisp to fight alongside you. All bow abilities now pierce, if applicable. This will just summon a small little arcane ball, like floating right next to your head, which will shoot a missile like every second. Not a lot of damage, just something to, you know, keep that consistent poke damage going. And then, of course, your bow ability's piercing will definitely help your auto attack. It'll help your second ability, your third ability. Not so much your fourth ability because it is a single target damage that will not travel, but more so just strike from above. And then, of course, your fifth skill will also have that same effect. And then for the Grandmaster, I have Mystic Echo. While above half health, all your physical damaging abilities will burst your target with an additional packet of damage. While below half health, your physical damaging abilities will heal you. This incentivizes players to continue to strike. This spec has some aspects of burst damage while also having aspects of, you know, consistent smaller strikes for players who wish to play such play style. And then the healing is more some slight survivability when you are at lower health, considering elementalists have a very small health pool and are very squishy. And of course, not a lot of damage and not a lot of healing because these are, you know, just passive things. These were the traits. I wanted to have a sampling. Of course, you would have 9, 10, 11 total traits within Elite Specialization, but I just wanted to do a minor trait, one example of an Adept, one example of a Master, and one example of a Grandmaster, with each of them possibly fitting a different niche. Hence, one being more of survival with the Adept, one being more of a continued poke, and then of course Mystic Echo continuing that poke Grandmaster idea if you want to play that style with additional slight survivability. So those are my treats. Thank you guys so much for watching my fan-made Elite Specialization, the Mystic, for the Elementalist profession. I definitely had a lot of fun doing this one. That being said, I've had fun doing all the ones that I've made so far. Thank you everyone for watching. This video will be up early on Patreon. If you're seeing this in public, it's up on Patreon as well. You guys can support me if you would like on Patreon or by other donations, considering these are some tough times. All links are down below if you want early access to my videos. Like the video if you liked it, comment down below your thoughts on my current specialization and perhaps some features you would like to see added for another Elite Specialization. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care everyone, and be on the lookout for my other ones. Bye!